Hello, and welcome to another edition of TP Talks. I'm John Machinsky, Executive Vice President and Customer Experience Strategist at Teleperformance, and I am so excited to be host and moderator for today's session. Today I've got the great pleasure of being here with Shannon Burch to discuss a topic that's really as fundamental as can be when engaging with your customers on a one-on-one basis. Shannon will provide insights on how Scotiabank, one of Canada's best brands and now a global powerhouse, creates memorable conversations with its customers. And as we get started, I'd like to make sure that we take care of a few housekeeping items. So as you'll note here on your screen, we've got several different widgets that might be helpful for you as we go along. The widgets themselves are resizable and movable. You'll notice that on the left and the right-hand side of the screen, you've got various options available to you. On the right-hand side, you can access our resources from the resource list window. And on the left side, if you've got a question, you can enter those in the Q&A window. Now, with that, you've also got a button for technical help. And if you'd like to reach us, there's also an icon there you can use to send an email. So as we do get started, I would encourage that as we go along, if you've got any questions along the way, we will save time for questions at the end of this presentation, so we'll have that opportunity to be able to answer as many of those as we can. A little bit about TP Talks. TP Talks was created by Teleperformance as an interactive webinar series done in bite-sized 30-minute segments. We engage our clients and friends to speak to topics related to curating a dynamic customer experience ecosystem. So our goal is to inspire on the value and process of becoming customer-centric, to also create a learning environment as we bring together customer experience stalwarts to share their experiences, provide a forum for great content among our collaborators, and at the end of the day, create optimized outcomes. Now, as they say, a rising tide raises all boats. Now, as we get going, here's a little bit of detail on your host for this customer experience journey. Teleperformance is the largest and most recognized omni-channel management, customer experience management firm in the world. Now, the company has 340 locations in 74 countries with 217,000 employees engaging in 265 languages and dialects. Now, in total, the Teleperformance ecosystem does interact with 40% of the world's population each year across a broad spectrum of channels, including voice, chat, email, SMS, video chat, face-to-face, and social media. Teleperformance has been recognized as a leader by many of the world's best-known brands based on performance, quality, thought leadership, flexibility, diversity, sustainability, and much more. Now, the company has also been highly recognized by Gartner, Frost & Sullivan, IDC, Everest Group, all that you'll see here, and many of the other most notable analyst firms. As I mentioned, on to the show. I'd like to introduce now Shannon Burch, and Shannon is going to be discussing how Scotiabank creates memorable conversations with its customers. As it says, automation and AI are transforming the customer experience, increasing the complexity of human interactions. The conversation model increases value for the customer and improves customer experience as a whole. Now, in this session, we will explore the benefits of using a conversation model that creates consistency and flexibility. We'll also review the benefits an organization can expect when embedding a conversation model into their culture. Now, about Shannon. Shannon Burch heads up the Financial Advice Solutions team across Scotiabank Canadian contact centers. As a designer of the current conversation process used within Scotiabank's contact centers, Shannon demonstrates her commitment to driving customer experience excellence in each and every interaction. Shannon firmly believes that business growth is positively correlated to an organization's ability to empower those employees who interact with customers. And as a certified customer journey mapper and highly skilled coach, Shannon models the behaviors she expects from her teams as she drives loyalty, value, and results. Now, a reminder, if you've got any questions, please enter them in the QA widget and submit them now. If we're unable to get through all of the questions, we will respond to all unanswered questions via email. So Please keep the questions coming. If you'd like to communicate with us directly, you can do so using the email widget at the bottom of your console. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Shannon.
Great. Thanks, John, for the very kind introduction. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. During this time where technology is really transforming our customer experience to make it easier for our customers to effortlessly solve their problems and make decisions, why would Scotiabank choose to focus on the customer conversation? Well, the answer to that question is very simple: our customers' behavior. As I mentioned, customers can find answers to their simple questions. They can actually research products and even open a bank account online now. But what we saw was a shift in the type of questions and problems they wanted to solve through human interaction. Our customers' needs were becoming more complex, and they required more in-depth conversation. Therefore, we needed to design a strategy that ensured our employees had the confidence to engage customers in these types of interactions. So what I'm going to do today is take you on a journey as we had decided to embed a customer conversation model into our contact center culture and how it benefited our business. So like all strategies, you have to determine why you need one. So let's just stop and take a moment ourselves. Think about a time when you called the contact center and the employee on the other end was pleasant, however, didn't really make a connection with you. They did take the time to solve your problem, but they certainly didn't take the time to ensure you had understanding or that you were completely satisfied. Although this kind of conversation was probably adequate and you felt that you got a solution to your problem, it wasn't memorable. And nor were you guaranteed that you got the correct advice or solution. This is what the conversations at Scotiabank sounded like. And so we set out to change them from transactions to advice-based conversations. We used technology such as text and speech analytics to assist us in filtering the customer feedback and find out what customers really wanted in an exceptional conversation. We could take that information and make sure we embedded it into our conversation model. Probably more importantly, we found out what customers were dissatisfied about, and we made sure that we didn't include that in our conversation model. Secondly, we asked our experts. You're right, that's right, the best advisors we had. We brought them together across different skills and call types to provide us feedback on the pain points both themselves and the customers had. Not only did this information help us in assisting what our customers need, but what behaviors these top advisors used to be successful in creating an exceptional customer experience. And we embedded those behaviors into our conversation model so that all advisors could use them. So conversation models are not new, and the one that we use is not unique. What was unique is how we've applied it to our environment for consistency, no matter what type of interaction is being used. It could be an inbound or an outbound call. It could be one for advice or sales or service. It could be a conversation about a bank account or an investment. So we call our conversation model the customer experience model, or CEM for short. And it's successful because it's part of our culture. I often joke that I say CEM, or customer experience model, a minimum of 20 times per day. And that's not very far from the truth. The CEM is part of everything we do, from decision making, strategy building, learning and teaching to our conversations on the phone. So after we designed the foundation and key behaviors for the model, we used our top advisory group again to assist us in high-impact words and phrases that we wanted embedded in the model. So some might ask, why would that be so important? Well, partially, it is for efficiency, but most importantly, for impact. Because as we know, there are certain words in the language that trigger emotions in humans when they hear them. Therefore, we want to use the best words that trigger the type of emotions that we want to create on our conversations and limit the words that create the bad emotional reactions during our conversations. So I'll give you some examples. We have removed words like no problem or no worries from our conversations because problem and worries create a negative emotional response in humans. But we've added words that create loyalty and trust, such as my advice would be, others in similar situations have done this, did you know you could do this, or I would be happy to help you with that. All make customers feel that they really developed a strong relationship and got the advice they were looking for. So once we felt like we were getting momentum with the conversation model and it was becoming part of our culture, we began to look for other ways to support our employees in those conversations. And we looked to technology. We developed a dynamic employee interface, which has the CEM embedded in it. For example, during, say, the trust building or relate section of the CEM, it will pop up sort of some best conversations starters that will help the advisor create a great environment to engage with the customer. So we use this in outbound right now, and we're currently developing an interface for our inbound calls as well. So what you see here on the slide is an example of a conversation model. As I mentioned before, it's not unique. You can look these up on the internet and find some examples, but I wanted to demonstrate sort of a flow and what kind of key behaviors need to be demonstrated in each section of the model. Once you've been able to develop and implement this type of model, you will see that your employees' confidence goes up and they can have more complex conversations with the opportunity to exceed the customer expectations. As I also mentioned, that designing the model is the easy part. Embedding the model into the day-to-day discipline is much, much more difficult. Although humans interact every day, conversations are not always effective or efficient. A great deal of time throughout our transformation has been spent teaching the behaviors, making sure people understand the value of those behaviors to the customer, and practicing them. For each phase of the conversation model includes the behavior that puts a customer at ease and allows for a much deeper conversation with the advisor, elevating the complexity and creating loyalty. I'll give you a quick example of how we collaborated and worked to develop some of the key behaviors in each one of the phases of the model, as well as the key talking points or conversation pieces that advisors use every time. For example, building trust is very, very important in the conversation model, and in our line of work is very difficult to do in a very, very condensed time frame. Often calls, and our calls do as well, start with, how was your day, or how are you doing? These questions, though, have very little emotional engagement and often are answered, fine. There's no real connection with the customer. So what we needed to do was find out something that was relevant to our customers to start the conversation. And what we did was we asked some of our advisors to go out and monitor their own friends, families, engage in conversations with strangers over a few days to determine what was their common elements that they saw in these conversations as they started and had them with different types of people. And overwhelmingly, we came back with a discussion around weather. I'm sure it does not shock anyone on the call that in Canada, the weather is an important part of our culture. From coast to coast, people in Canada like to talk about the weather because it changes moment by moment. So for us, that was a really good place to start in being able to quickly engage with a customer to create that trust and build an advisory type of conversation. As well, what happens is that we can also change that up at any time. So, for example, when it's during the Stanley Cup playoffs, we would change that up to adding some conversations around favorite hockey teams or the results of the game last night, which creates a great type of conversation with the customer, assuming your team's winning. This July, when Canada celebrated its 150th birthday, we also implemented conversation around what people were doing to celebrate. So once you have the model in place, you can change the verbiage to what's important to your customers at any given time. It's super important to create that authenticity, and we find this allows advisors to pick and choose what is makes their conversations most authentic. I would suggest, in order to sustain the conversation model and gain consistency that you desire, that my recommendation would be to align your coaching processes, your call calibrations, and any quality reviews to the model as well. We found that the feedback from all of those different processes help develop the employees' behaviors and let them achieve success. So, John, I think you have a question for the audience now.
As a matter of fact, I do. So we do typically have a poll question in our TV Talk sessions, and so today's poll question is, based on what you've seen, what do you anticipate the outcome to have been? Your first option is better customer experience, but lower employee retention. Better customer experience, but also lower agent productivity. No significant change to the metrics. Or higher customer experience, higher employee retention, and higher agent productivity. So we'll give everybody a minute to input your answer, and we'll take a look at the results. All right, let's take a look. Well, it appears we do have a very savvy audience. So we've got 93.5% of the respondents have thought that there was a higher customer experience, a higher employee retention, and a higher agent productivity. So Shannon, would you like to walk everybody through the actual results?
Yeah, thanks, John. We have extremely intelligent audience participation today, and obviously we spent a lot of time and energy in putting this model into our culture, and it was great that we found such results. What I would say is that to start, we almost as soon as we started implementing the model, we saw gains in our customer experience. Obviously, we didn't see a 20% increase every year since we started. However, we do see an increase. We do see the voice of the customer continue to increase, and you can, if you need to move results up in a certain area because what you're hearing from your customers, you have the flexibility in the model to put emphasis in certain areas and develop stronger skills as you respond to what your customers are telling you in the verbatim. Our employees are for sure more engaged. They really enjoy the fact that they have the flexibility to have different conversations and truly feel like they are assisting customers and with their financial needs. And this has certainly reduced turnover. But what I would say probably one of the greatest gains, and one that was we weren't sure about the gain was going to be in productivity. So each year since implementing the model, and we started our test about 3 years ago, we have seen a productivity gain anywhere from 9 to 13%. And when we began to implement the strategy or look at the strategy, we were concerned about expanding average handle time and potentially having to reduce the number of calls every advisor could take. But it's actually the exact opposite. As employees perfect the conversation and they become more efficient at gathering the nuggets early in the call, and rather than reacting to objections later in the call, we find that the calls become much more efficient. The handle time goes down. There's less requirement for return or second calls, which are all positive in our environment. The other positive is our ability to respond to changes in the marketplace. So since we never waver from the model, we can react really quickly to changes in the marketplace. For example, the central bank in Canada has increased interest rates several times this year. And in those times, we can quickly add either new discovery questions or investigative type comments into the model to get a sense of what customers are thinking about the impact of the increase on their own personal financial situation, and decide whether we want to go further into a conversation of how it applies to them personally, or determine that the customer's really not concerned about it. So in conclusion, I just can't emphasize enough how important embedding the conversation model into the culture is and how much hard work it takes. As I created a vision for what the conversation should look like, many hours were spent sharing that vision with others across the organization. It is important that groups in your organization, such as marketing, product groups, learning and development, all understand the model and believe in its importance in the contact center interactions. We have evolved over and over again since implementation how we teach, practice, and coach to the model, and I suspect we will continue to evolve this in the future as we want to keep reinventing and keeping the conversations fresh. So I hope that this glimpse into Scotiabank's journey to change the customer conversations has been helpful to those of you that are thinking about changing your conversation model in your organization, or are looking past technology for other ways to improve the experience for your customer. Although our journey is certainly not over, I am confident that having a solid conversation model in the culture has provided us the foundations that we require to shift and adjust as our customers demand. So I thank you all for taking time out of your busy day today, and John, I'm available for a few questions if we have any.
Well, that's perfect. I would say based on the number of questions that I've seen here so far, we do in fact have many participants here today that are very engaged and are looking at implementing this type of a solution within their organization as well. So why don't we go through a few of those questions. First question we've got here is from Anush, and the question is, how are you able to embed the processes and the new culture through such a large organization like Scotiabank to be consistently used?
That is a great question, Anush. I think it takes a lot of hard work. And like I said, we're still in the journey, and we started in a phased approach. We started with the advice channels and really did some learning from the advice channels, and as we transitioned and rolled it out slowly into our care experiences, our chat. This is also something that works in e-customer experience as well. As we did that, we learned from the first pilot, if we want to call it that, and we've developed stronger learning material and collateral, and again, it becomes just part of what everybody talks about is how we get the consistency across our numerous sites that service our Canadian customers. We also have it now, our international branches or contact centers that service our international customers also use the model, and it's all from just talking about it constantly.
All right, great. And the next question we have is from Greg. And Greg's question is, what part of the conversation model was the most difficult for employees to adapt? And how did your organization overcome those challenges?
Oh, Greg, my managers probably want to answer this question. I don't know which one they would say was the most difficult, but I'm going to go with the discovery. So building trust and relating was certainly hard for people, but I think the most emphasis came on helping people to ask really great questions that would get them the information from the customer to make sure that whatever advice or solutions we were giving that customer was first of all accurate and was going to be inclusive of everything the customer was looking for. Part of that is some hesitancy culturally in prying into customers and feeling that they may be intruding. And part of it was just not knowing how to frame sort of a series of questions. So we have spent a lot of time working with teams to develop their own questions and feel confident and authentic in the way those questions are asked. But certainly if you can develop those questions, create an environment where they stop to listen to the answers as well, and then build the advice on those questions, you really diminish any objection handling that has to happen later in the call, which always creates some challenges, whether it's advice-based or solutions providing. Great question.
All right, thanks, Shannon. And I think we've got time maybe for one more question. So this question is from David. And the question is, how has implementing the strategy changed the way that QAs are done on the associates?
So that's a good question and an easy one for me to answer because we don't have a QA department in Scotiabank anymore, a formal traditional one. What we replace that with is speech analytics, which really works to use the for audit and compliance purposes. And we've gone to a very disciplined coaching model. And so our managers are coaching their employees up to 80% of their time in a week to make sure that conversation is embedded in every single call. So that would be our answer. We didn't really have to change anything on QA because we just don't have one anymore in the traditional sense.
Okay. I would say, though, that being said, there's still, from what I know of you and Scotiabank, still a very strong emphasis on quality as a whole, and it's really up to the rest of the team to be able to manage the quality process through the course of our everyday activities. I know how stringent Scotia is in terms of quality management with teleperformance, as an example.
Yeah, for sure. Like on the audit and compliance piece, it's stringent and that piece, but we separated the two. The quality of the conversation is in the hands of the managers and the people that are on the floor listening to those calls and impacting the behaviors all the time.
Perfect. All right. Well, Shannon, thank you so much here for the time here today. Just as a reminder here for everybody that the on-demand version of the webcast will be available approximately one day after the webcast and can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier. Also, we've got a couple of other resources that may be helpful for everyone. So a reminder that you can download a copy of our ebook, Curating the Customer Experience, and our white paper, Implementing a Truly Omni-Channel Customer Experience. The other reminder here then too is if you do click on this URL, you'll have access then to the previous TB Talk sessions, the live recordings of those sessions, including sessions that have been done with Michael Kors, Caesars Entertainment, United Healthcare, and MasterCard, as well as with analysts from Frost & Sullivan, Everest Group, and HFS Research. So I'd again like to thank Shannon for all of the great insights here today. We hope that you've enjoyed today's session. Please do be on the lookout for an invitation then to future TP Talk sessions as well. One is coming very soon. So thanks again for participating, and have a great rest of your day.